Hi, I'm Marty Wilson, author of the best-selling What I Wish I Knew series, an international conference speaker on taking fear out of change. Today, I'm talking about my top 5 tips for setting up a conference room or speaking event based on what the world's top comedy rooms have in common. As someone who speaks at conference events all over the world, I meet a lot of conference and event organisers. And when they find out that I'm a former Australian Comic of the Year and I worked full-time as a stand-up on the brutal UK circuit for 7 years, I often get asked how the world's best comedy rooms are set up. It's a fair question because over my 7 years in Britain, I did just over 5 gigs a week. At an average crowd of about 200, that's 350,000 people and a lot of different comedy rooms. But there are things that all the really great rooms had in common. So I thought I'd pass on my top 5 tips for people setting up a room for a conference or an event. And stay to the end because number 5 is probably the most important and it's the one that comedy has only just started doing well. Number 1, beware the comedy chasm. For any performance to be successful, you need a strong connection between the stage and the audience. So great comedy clubs in the UK, from the Stand Up in Edinburgh, the Glee clubs in Birmingham and Cardiff, to the comedy stores in Manchester and London, all the way down to the Comedia in Brighton, they all avoid what is known in stand-up as a comedy chasm, where there's any sort of gap between the front row and the stage. Any space that causes a disconnect between your performer and your audience needs to be avoided, so consciously set up your room to stop this. Put the front row of seats right up near the stage. Make sure the room fills from the front. Either have designated seating, or what many comedy clubs do is they rope off or even curtain off the back rows. Or a more polite way I've seen done well at conferences is to write the word reserved on bits of A4 paper and leave them on the back 5 rows until the front is full. One last thing you can do is get the leaders in the company to make a big thing of sitting down the front and encouraging their staff to do so as well. Number 2, cheap lanyards, expensive sound. All the really big comedy venues have a backup microphone just off stage in the wings, and it's always one with a lead, not a radio mic, just in case. You'd think this type of understanding about how precious good sound is would flow onto the corporate speaking world, but incredibly it's not. I once did a gig in an absolute state-of-the-art venue in Sydney when I was the guest speaker for a phenomenally successful computer firm celebrating 20 years in business. All their current clients and a whole host more that the firm were trying to attract were in the crowd. They would have spent at least $50,000 on the venue, the canapes, vintage Paul Roger champagne, and these lanyards that had gold silk cords and beautiful leather pouches. When I asked the sound man to set me up with my requested lapel mic, he sheepishly said the organisers, I hadn't hired one to save some money, and they said I could just use the mic at the lectern. I normally use pretty much the whole stage, running around everywhere. There's like a couple of stories that I tell that require me to get in character and jump around a bit. But when I tried to move away from the lectern, it was obvious people up the back couldn't hear. So I had to speak from the podium, and I had to have my mind like racing 60 seconds ahead of my mouth, editing what was coming up in my keynote and dropping things that had to be performed away from the microphone. The gig still went really well. I got lots of material, so that wasn't the problem. And there was plenty of backslapping afterwards, but I just couldn't get over that they'd spent 30, 40, 50 grand on the night, but they'd balked at a couple of $100 for a lapel mic. Please, cheap lanyards, expensive sound. Number 3, turn down the house lights. There's a very good reason why all comedy clubs, and theatres and concert venues for that matter, have the house lights down and the stage lights up. It focuses the crowd's attention on the stage. Now, I don't mean total darkness. There are a lot of corporate speaking venues, many speakers like to see the faces of the people in the crowd. But just dimming the lights a little gets everyone looking at the stage and draws attention away from all your work colleagues. Particularly in an office environment, all the eyes will be on the boss. If the lights are up on full brightness and a speaker cracks a joke or makes a point that is slightly contentious, everyone who's intimidated by this person will quickly glance over at them to make sure if they're laughing or not, or whether the person's offended or not. Number 4, round tables or theatre style. Have you ever been to a comedy club, theatre or rock concert and sat around huge 6-foot wide tables? By contrast, how are the audience seated in videos we've all seen from TED Talks, the most successful talks going around at the moment? I don't know why sitting around huge tables is the standard configuration for corporate speaking events, because it keeps everyone facing their colleagues instead of the performers. So just like in the previous point, everyone is checking in with everybody else to see how they should be responding, and that causes a disconnect. Unless there's a specific need for large tables, if your speaker gets audience members to interact, or if there's going to be a meal served, always consider setting up the room in theatre style, even just for one session. Number 5, make sure everyone can see the speaker's face. Sight lines are incredibly important when you're setting up a room for a function. In the last few years, all the great comedy clubs have started going to extraordinary lengths to make sure the audience can see the performer's face. Ramped seating, no columns holding up the room, even huge screens for larger theatre gigs. And there are sound scientific reasons why. A psychologist called Paul Ekman, recently named by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world, has done some amazing research into just how much of our communication is transmitted through our faces. In particular, what he calls micro-expressions. These are tiny flickers of our facial muscles that our brains are trained to pick up and interpret. And it's actually how we get a gut feeling if we can trust and like someone, or even if we can tell when they're lying. If we can't see these, we can't perceive them, and we can't effectively connect and bond with the speaker on stage. So please, make sure you sort out the sight lines and get some big screens up for those at the back. So there are my 5 tips for setting up any room based on how the world's best comedy rooms are set up. Number 1, beware the comedy chasm. Number 2, cheap lanyards, expensive sound. Number 3, turn down the house lights. Number 4, round tables or theatre style. Number 5, make sure everyone can see the speaker's face. If you've got something out of today's video, please press the like button for me. And please leave a comment and tell me what's your best tip for setting up a room to keep the audience and the stage connected. Feel free to check out the rest of my videos at martywilson.com.au/videos, and I'll see you soon. These are tiny flickers of our facial muscles. Facial muscles? What are the tiny flickers of our facial These are the tiny flickers. What was that? A psychologist called Paul Ekman, recently named by Time magazine as one of the most 100. A psychologist called Paul Ekman, recently named by Time magazine as one of the most 100. A psychologist called